In section 3b, we're going to look at the probability of independent compound events. Compound events is one event followed by another. And the rule for them is you take the probability of the first event and you multiply it times the probability of the event that follows, the second event. And it's possible you could have a third event, so then you would multiply it times the probability of the third event. So what I'm really saying there is you multiply the probabilities together, depending on how many times something was done. So let's look at number 21. A die is rolled 3 times. Find the probability that a 1 is rolled, then a 2, then a 3. So this says I got to multiply the probability of getting a 1 times the probability of getting a 2 on my second roll, and then times the probability of a 3 on the third roll. So if you think about on a die, there are 6 outcomes that can happen when you roll a die on a standard die. So 6 outcomes. What's the probability of a 1? Well, there's only one 1 on a die, so the probability of 1 is 1 out of 6. Remember, probability is successes out of total, so it would be 1/6. Okay, now I'm going to roll it a second time. What's the probability of a 2? Well, there's 1 2 out of 6. And these are independent because really what you rolled in the first one has no outcome or effect on the second one. And then what's the probability of a 3 on my third roll? Well, that is also 1 out of 6 because there's 1 3 out of 6. Now, remember when you multiply fractions, the rule is I multiply my tops. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And then I multiply my denominators or bottoms. 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. Now, here's different ways to list your answer. You can leave it as a simplified fraction. We can't simplify that. You can actually divide that. So if you take your calculator and divide that, 1 divided by 216, I would go to like 3 decimal places. It's about 0.004. And then you could also, so that's another way you could list your answer. You could also list it as a percentage. And if you think about a percentage, you move your decimal over 2 places, it would be 0.4 and then put your percent symbol on. So less than 0.5% probability of getting a 1, then a 2, then a 3. Now let's go down to number 24. So let me scroll down here a little bit. So a key thing when you're drawing things out, now we just did an example with rolling a die, but when you're drawing things out, whether you're drawing cards out of a deck, one followed by another, whatever, or drawing marbles out of a bag or anything like that, names out of a hat, the key thing is looking for what makes them independent, what makes them dependent. And if there's replacement after each draw, they are really independent. Okay? Because you have the same amount of items that you started with for the second draw, and if there was a third draw, it would be the same. So, this is independent. So we're going to do number 24 here. What's the probability of a yellow, then a red? So I'm going to take the probability of a yellow times the probability of a red on my second draw. And there is replacement, key word. So what's the probability of a yellow? I've got 4 yellows, 5 blues, 6 reds. So you need to find a total because we're dealing with probability. So if I do 4 plus 5 plus 6, there's 15 total marbles. So what's the probability of a yellow? Well, probability of a yellow, there are 4 yellow out of 15. And then what's the probability? We're going to multiply that times the probability of a second. Now, after I drew out a yellow, I put it back in, so there's still 15 marbles in the bag for my second draw. What's the probability of a red? 6 out of 15. Now I multiply those probabilities together. Actually, I would do a little reducing first. It might be a little bit easier. You don't have to do this right away. This does reduce. So I'm going to do 4 over 15 times, divide those both by 3. It would be 2 over 5. And so now I multiply the tops. 4 times 2 is 8. 15 times 5 is 75. And I can't reduce that fraction anymore. So there's the fraction form of an answer. You could also divide that. 8 divided by 75 on the calculator is approximately 0.107, which if I convert that to a percent is about 10.7%. 3 possible answers. Now you don't have to give all 3. You can give any of the 3 that are acceptable.